You are the facilitator of their learning and their safety, and you're also the adult in the room.
That's today's guest, professor, researcher, and classroom management expert Jennifer Gee, on the value of making sure students know they matter. Welcome to Music Ed Insights. I'm leadership trainer and former band director Alan Fire, here with composer and co-college music education program head Steve Shanley.
Each episode, Alan and I talk with national thought leaders in music education with practical insights for K-12 music educators.
Steve, tell us about our guest.
Dr. Jenny Gee is an associate professor of elementary general music education at San Diego State University. Her research is focused on pre-service teacher preparation, specifically in positive classroom management strategies and music integration in the elementary classroom. Her research has been published in numerous journals, and she currently serves as the California Music Educators Association representative for elementary music. Find Jenny's full bio, show notes, and resources at musicedinsights.com. Alan, what was the takeaway you had from this episode?
I liked her talk about modeling. People don't do what we say when they see us do something different. So teachers got to model for students, and students can model behavior for each other. She has a lot to offer there. What about you, Steve?
Well, I think sometimes just being reminded that we are not alone in our struggles can be so helpful. So for all of those listeners who are wondering, is it just me? Jenny tells you, no, these are some very common challenges in music classrooms across the country right now.
Yeah, true. In general, it's all about one of my favorite concepts, self-efficacy, for both students and teachers. Her ideas help us get to the point where everyone in the room is capable. Insiders get ad-free episodes. If you want the benefits of being a Music Ed Insights insider, head to our website to learn more. But for now, let's talk with Jenny Gee.
Jenny Gee, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm honored and excited to talk about all things classroom management.
Well, yes, we have asked you to join us today to talk about classroom management. So what are the primary classroom management challenges that you see music teachers facing nowadays in the wake of the pandemic?
That's a great question. I had such great conversations with these elementary teachers, and most of them were itinerant. And one was at 9 schools. Can you imagine? One was at 7 or 8. And they talked a lot about taking the time and having the time to learn their students' names, have their own name be known by their administrator. One was referred to as, quote, the music lady. And when they asked their administrator, why are you not going to learn my name? They said, I don't know that I need to because there'll just be another you next year. So I think it's that sense of feeling important and supported as a credentialed or licensed music educator in your own building has a lot to do with your own self-efficacy and your own belief in yourself to be able to do your job. But in terms of the student behavior, there's a lot of elopement from classrooms. Just, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be here, so I'm going to leave. And that's a safety issue. We can't walk out of our classroom and leave everyone else and go get them. So can we contact the appropriate people to help us in those situations? They spoke about defiance, just no. I'm not doing that. All that time where we were isolated and at home and all of our awesome parents and caregivers and guardians were doing their best to manage all of it. And those of us who were teaching at home and also had, other people at home to help. And it was a lot. And so these teachers spoke about there's a lack of self-regulation skills of how do you figure out when you're upset and what do you do with that? And when you're 4, you may not have the words to identify how you're feeling. And if you're 10, you may not as well. So it's how are we teaching the content, building relationships with our students, as we know is so important, and also helping them learn these life skills. They also talked about lack of conflict resolution skills of what do you do when you have a disagreement with someone. Putting your hands on them when you're upset is not the best choice. And they're trying to figure out how do I use my words to say, I don't like it when you do this, this, and this. So those were the main ones in terms of behavior, but there's plenty more, but those really came up a lot.
I love your use of the term self-efficacy, because I don't think it just applies to teachers developing their self-efficacy. It applies to students. Like so many of these could be resolved if everyone felt in control of their whole experience.
I agree. To that point, I did a classroom management self-efficacy study. I think it was published in 2021. And I'm going to circle back with another scholar, and we just had this conversation this week about what is the self-efficacy of K to 12 music educators with classroom management now in a post-pandemic environment. And it would be really interesting if we could speak with students about theirs in those classrooms as well, because I know that they're watching us as educators handle behavior, approach behavior, and I know that they have thoughts about, do they feel safe in our classrooms? Do they feel like they can come to us without judgment? Things like that are all things that we're dealing with. But, really one of the number one things is leaving the classroom without permission because they're upset or they don't have those regulation skills to be able to calm themselves down. So they just don't want to even be in the same place with us. And it's a struggle.
It is a struggle. In fact, I think our listeners right now, including, for example, my wife, who teaches in an urban middle school music, is probably listening to your research findings saying, yeah, I did not need to do any official research to be able to tell you any of those problems. So the real reason everybody came to this concert today, what advice do you have for us moving forward?
Hopefully enough. We talk about community, and I think that's a word that might get thrown around a little bit I don't want to say it's a word we use flippantly, but I think it can be kind of added to our teacher to-do list of, oh, just build a community with your class. Oh, just build relationships. And we can do that, but it takes time and it's patience on our part. It's patience on our students' part. And some of the things that I love to share that are things you can do right now are use strategies. For example, they're called proactive preventative measures, and there's all kinds of research about them being used and the effectiveness, but things like verbal cues for our students who might be more anxious might need to know, well, what are we doing next? So I have that in my mind. And those are things like you can say, when I say go, we're going to turn to page 5 in our method books. And by the time I get to this, or I say this word, we'll have our instruments ready, we'll be ready to go. So they have that verbal prompt so they know, okay, I have this much time, this is what I'm going to do. Now I have that expectation. I also like to say, in a moment, we're going to go line up, get ready for lunch, and here we go. And there are mixed feelings about counting, but I think it's the way you count. So in elementary world, I would say, when I say go, we're going to go calmly and quietly line up. And when I get to 5, I would love to see you all ready with calm bodies. And I would count like 1, 2, instead of this like stressed out. I think that it matters our vocal, how we voice that, the timbre of our voice, the affect that we have. We could say things like, I expect you to make a wise choice by whom you stand, who you sit. I prefer wise as to other words, things like modeling. So in elementary, music classes, that really helped. I'm going to show you what it looks like to go grab your pair of rhythm sticks. I'm going to show you how we handle our scarves. I'm going to show you what it looks like to have a calm, safe body when we line up to leave. I'm going to show you what it looks like to help your neighbor do X, Y, and Z. Sometimes I would have students model and we just randomly draw those names out. So we're not picking, quote, our favorites, because we all kind of lean towards certain people in our classrooms, maybe subconsciously, but we tend to do that and we know it. And then I use my proximity. So, for our chatty group who just want to just keep talking about the weekend that just passed or what they're doing, is I would just go teach from that part of the room. I think, especially when we're newer teachers, we tend to teach towards the front of the classroom and it's like we're Velcroed up there. But I encourage teach from everywhere in the room. Let's keep them on our toes. Maybe I'm in the middle of the circle. Maybe I have lines through my ensemble seating and I'm back there between them on the side. So they're, kind of looking for me and keeping that engagement of where are they? Where are we doing? Why are we back here? I had a student say, why are you standing by me? He said, why not? And what they didn't know I was actively keeping them focused on what we were doing and not talking to their bud about the dinosaur chicken nuggets for lunch. Because, that's a big topic. Do they taste like dinosaurs or not? We circled around to that a lot in kindergarten. And we landed on no, they do not. And then talking about things like asking rhetorical questions. I think we have great intentions with the way that we ask questions to be polite. But I think sometimes we get into a pickle with those. So we say things like, can we all go do this now?
No.
But we're them exactly that opportunity. Nope. I'm not going to. And so we're unintentionally digging our own hole. So I've shared with teachers many, many times, it's really simple to turn that into a statement. Now we're all going to go do X, Y, and Z. And it's us being kind and professional and stating the boundary of now it's time to go do this that we're going to do. So those are things that can be just really quick and useful. Also, in terms of engagement, I think we often fall into this trap of lecturing, and we want to share how much knowledge we have because we all have so much that we want to teach and share, but sometimes we can forget that they are sitting and their bodies are showing us, please let me move. Please let me play. Please let me be engaged. So I've always gone by this kind of rule of age idea that for every year old a child is, that's about how long we're going to stay on one task. So in
Mhm.
first grade, they're about 6 or 7. So about every 6 or 7 minutes, if we're sitting, then we're going to stand. If we're standing, then we're going to sit. Maybe we're working on the steady beat. We're clapping the steady beat. Now we're walking to the steady beat. And it makes music classes really movement based. And I know in ensembles that also applies that, we've been working on this, so we're going to switch to this. Maybe we're in sectionals, so it's keeping that engagement in the variety in the way that they're doing things. And it really helps with attention, their focus, the engagement, the retention of the material. It sparks their curiosity, their imaginative ideas, because we're just moving at a pace, but also, we know our own people. So obviously, it doesn't have to be exact, but I found that to be super helpful. I think another thing for us to remember is if we're frustrated in the moment, we're allowed to take 10 seconds or however long we need to sit down and talk with the student or students who maybe made a choice that was not what we were looking for. Because I think sometimes we forget that we also are pulled in 1,000 different directions during the day because we're code switching between, okay, I'm teaching kindergarten, now I'm teaching fifth grade, now I'm teaching first grade, with maybe zero transition time. Or it's, oh, I just had a seventh grade band and now I'm going to guitar class. And so we're doing all these things, and maybe we just need to give ourselves, not maybe, we do need to give ourselves time to make sure that we're in a calm place. I said to many of my students several times, I would like for us to discuss this, but I'm not ready yet. So I will come find you at lunch and we'll go sit and we'll chat. And never did I hear, no, I'm really frustrated and I want to talk about this now. And it gave us both time to calm down, to really think about what it was that happened. Because you get the adrenaline and you're trying to make sure that they're safe or whatever it is. And I found that to be helpful. And also going to find them at lunch, though I know that it's a choice that, we're giving possibly our time to have that time that we might need by ourselves to also kind of reset ourselves. So it's a choice that we make, of course. But I found that going to meet them in their space at lunch or at recess, while I tended not to interrupt recess because I think it's important to go play outside. Sunshine does a lot of good. But usually at lunch, or maybe, their classroom teacher said, sure, you can come talk to them. And we just talk about, how was your morning? And I'd find out a lot. I always started with questions of, how was your morning? Did you get to eat breakfast today? How was last night? I would hear things like, well, I didn't sleep very well. And then this morning I just felt cranky and something went on. And then it's all this information. I thought, okay, well, it's not about me. And it generally is not about us. It's something else that we have to figure out. I see that as having really helped inform that we're teaching people, and people have stuff. Our kids have stuff that we can't necessarily see all the time. And it takes a while to figure out, oh, maybe you just need to sit in a certain place in the room. Maybe I just need to come be nearer to you when you give me, we would call it the bat signal of, I got a little bat signal from a kid when they came in the room, and it's, oh, you just need to go take a minute and then you'll join us when you're ready. So things like that I hope are helpful to the listeners. They've really been helpful to me in my own teaching, and they've been helpful to my students.
It sounds like so many of your suggestions revolve around language, the language we use, the words we select. And in my experience, it's pretty easy for me to hear a suggestion from you and then say to myself, future Steve is totally going to do that. But then in the heat of the moment, I know that I just go back to my defaults,
Mm.
which might involve asking a rhetorical question to which I don't really want the answer,
And I
or
still do
maybe
it too.
saying, hey, let's make good decisions today, people, instead of wise decisions.
Right.
And with my students or with people who are out in the field already and asking me for classroom management suggestions, I suggest that they record their classes
I
so
think that's
they
a
can
good idea.
hear the language they're using, so they at least know what their defaults are. And
Mhm.
I also suggest that they just try things like when they're driving in the car alone, practicing saying things to their students. What ideas do you have as far as making some of this language that you suggest more of a default that we don't have to put so much of our mental energy into when the classroom might be burning down around us?
Right. I love your suggestions, and I do both of those things. So I think recording ourselves, especially, we see a lot of our teacher presence and affect that we may not even realize. Of course, in our mind's eye, it looks differently, right? So I know I say so. And the higher my students kind of poke at me that the higher pitch the so, the more excited I am about what we're doing. I'm still working on that one. And now that I've said it, I'm going to be aware that I'm doing it right now. So see, I just did it. And rehearsing what you're saying, I think is super important. I used to have about a 30-minute commute to school, so I would practice how I was going to give instructions for an activity. And while I was setting up my classroom, I would also be focused on what one strategy do I want to work on today or this week? Because I think it's overwhelming, right? It's I need to do this, but no, I need to do this, and this might be better. So, what is the thing that resonates with you right now? What could you do tomorrow that seems the most approachable? Maybe it's adding in a verbal prompt. When I say go, we're going to do this. Maybe it's you put a sticky note up at the front of the classroom where you only see it. I always had a music stand with my plans. And maybe it's when I say go. So before every class, I see that and think, okay, I'm going to work on it. And we're going to be kind to ourselves because we're not perfect and we don't have to be perfect, but we can try our best to pick up one thing. Maybe that one thing will change that class that makes our stomach flip over when they're walking down the hallway because we just don't know how it's going to go. We love them, but it might be that one class that just has a hard time getting along. It might be that class that the directions just seem to go in one ear and out the other. So maybe it's that one thing a week. If every day is too much, which it might be, that we think, okay, I'm going to try this with every class or just this one grade and we'll see how it goes. So hopefully I'm answering your question, but I
Yeah.
think it's taking it in small pieces.
Yeah, looking for the
So,
small victories. We're
yeah,
not
and
going to make
knowing,
everything amazing in one day, but if we can just make an improvement here or there, we need
right,
to celebrate that.
and those small improvements make such a big difference for our well-being, for our students' well-being, and I think it's important that we really celebrate those with our students as well. I think especially with the little ones, it's fun to make a big deal out of a celebration of I love how this worked out. You all listened so well. I'm so proud of you. Let's see how well we can do tomorrow. Instead of, oh, people are talking again. Oh, people aren't listening to the negative brings us down as well as them. And I know, sometimes, there are times where we have to say that's not okay. That's not how we act in here, especially if it's a safety concern. But I really feel like small victories mean a lot. And our students know too, because they sense it in us that we're stressed. And sometimes they might try to capitalize on that depending on who we're talking about, right?
How do you react to this advice? I say, don't drive to school hoping or expecting the students are going to be angels today. If you do that, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Or don't drive to school just assuming that all of a sudden your administrator, when you want to send a student to the office, says, no, we don't have time for that today, and they send them back to your class, even though these are established patterns of behavior. Because in my experience with a lot of my teacher friends, they are kind of getting upset about things on a Thursday that they know full well, if they're thinking about it, are totally going to happen on a Thursday. And yet they go into it hoping, well, maybe today will be different. What's
Yeah.
your initial gut reaction to that?
My gut reaction is we can only control so much, right? I mean, kids will be kids. They're humans. They're learning how to be people. They're learning how to be at school. They're learning how to interact with each other. And a lot of that has changed in the last couple of years, pandemic wise. other things. So I remember driving to school thinking that one class, the class that I was most stressed about, kind of I was just referring to of it's going to be like this, kind of almost being my own self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think maybe what we can do is think, okay, I know that this tends to be how this group is. I think it's the mentality in which we approach it of it's okay if it's not perfect, but what can I actually do something about?
Yeah, I like that. That's a great way of putting a more positive spin on the Steve Shanley sort of approach of set low expectations. If you set super high expectations, you'll just be disappointed. It's a much nicer way of saying that.
I
Alan
think
And
might,
that I have a really high expectations. I think it's a matter of how do I get there and what's the reasonable timeline for that, right?
exactly. Yeah.
It's what's actually reasonable and what's my unreasonable expectation. And I had to have a lot of conversations with myself of, maybe that's just not reasonable right now.
I think you're both saying the same thing.
Yeah.
If you're constantly frustrated, your expectations are probably off base, probably too high.
Yeah. Or just not attainable at that moment, right? You have to
Mm-hmm. Too high
adjust.
for the moment. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Too high for the
Yeah.
moment. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to toss this question to Alan because he has a lot of experience working with corporate clients, grown-ups, and you were talking about the importance of modeling. And in an elementary classroom, I'm now going to show you how I go over to get the ORF instruments out, or I'm going to show you how I line up, and all of those very specific examples of modeling where we are going to do the exact thing the students are going to do. I think should not be lost on our middle and high school teachers that there is still very much modeling that needs to be happening, though it might not be you are going to copy exactly what I do. So, Alan, where would you weigh in on that?
First of all, bottom line up front, it's important at every level. So, yes, everybody appreciates knowing exactly what the expectations are. I think something that can happen at the corporate level and then by the transitive property, also at the middle school and high school level, is leaders assume that people know what the expectations are. You're old enough, you should know by now. You're 12. You are 15 years old. You are 17. You've been doing this. You've been in school for 12 years. You should know this by now. Yep, they should, but they don't, or their brain is full. Like you talk about expectations in the moment. In the moment, the brain is full. Without being insulting, it's okay to be very specific about what it is that you expect. Am I answering the question you asked, Steve?
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind a few other examples from Jenny about what modeling might look like in a high school orchestra rehearsal. And I don't mean here's how to play vibrato on the
Or,
viola, but it
or
might even just be tone of voice or pacing.
Well, what if it's how do we come in and get our instruments, get set up, and get ready to go? What does that look like? Where do you go first? How long do you have to get there? Do you have time to chat with your friends? Is that part of this? Is that okay? Maybe it's the first day and you're like, okay, I'm first chair cello. What am I going to do? I'm going to walk in. Here's how I'm going to walk in. I'm going to go grab my instrument. Kind of like, what stations are you going to? How long do you have to do that? What's the expectation at the downbeat? What should you have at your stand? Should you have your pencil, your instrument? I would hope so. Your music, all of those things. What does that look like? What does it sound like? Maybe there are reminders on the whiteboard, the smart board, whatever it is up there, the chalkboard, if you're still doing that. But what I'm saying is, I don't feel like it's undermining them as high school students to set a clear expectation of boundary is of when you come into this space, into this community, into this ensemble, here are the expectations because maybe they had 4 classes before where they walk in and they have different sets of expectations. That's a lot to hold in your brain to borrow Alan's statement of I think it's really helpful for them to know when you're in this particular space, these are the boundaries and the expectations, and showing them that, and maybe reminding them after Thanksgiving break, maybe reminding them after winter break, because things just fall out of our heads because we're thinking about other stuff. We can't assume but they're being taught outside of school. And we talk at San Diego State a lot of let's not assume anything and let's do our best to be kind and professional to help them learn those life skills at school. Whether you agree with that being part of our jobs or not, it becomes part of what we do, right? Of helping them learn how to interact with people, helping them know you have 5 minutes to accomplish this task. Maybe that's getting yourself ready to go, and then you're ready for rehearsal. And if you need help figuring out how to navigate that, we're there to help you do that.
And you said, and maybe that's not their fault, but that's not necessarily their fault. Well, what if it is their fault? So what? We are in the situation that we're in now. Let's do what actually works to get from point A to point B instead of lecturing them about what they should know by now.
And maybe, to your point, if we've modeled and we've explained and they're still not doing what we've asked, then I feel like it's into the private conversation of, I noticed a time or two this week that you seem to have you're struggling with getting all your materials and everything ready for rehearsal. How can I support you? Asking questions rather than making accusations about what we assume that's going on. I've learned so much from asking questions when I just thought, well, it's obviously this. Nope, I was wrong every time. Every time.
Right, lots of great stuff, reminders, new things, hopefully, as we like to remind our listeners, especially on action-packed episodes like this one, where there's lots and lots of stuff. Even if you just take one idea away from this that helps your classroom management tomorrow, it's all going to be for the good. So, Jenny, what cool things have you been up to lately?
Well, if I might share, I am now tenured at San Diego State.
Oh,
so that
congratulations.
Thank you. As of May of 2024, I'm very happy to say that, and I'm glad that I'm not going to do that process again, but happy to have that going. We are happy to share with you that we have a master's in music education at San Diego State that we are launching in the fall of 2026. So we're really excited about that.
That in person, online?
It's in person, right? So we've structured it so a K to 12 teacher can go about their job working and then come to classes in the late afternoon and evening. And there's a few classes in the summer, but something we're really excited about because we wanted to make it approachable for people who are out there teaching, because it's not as easy to just leave your job to do your degree, which I know some people do, but we really wanted to make that approachable. I am currently the California Music Education Association representative for elementary music in the state. So I will serve in that role for 2 years. We've started an Elementary Music Teachers of California Instagram account. We had our first social Zoom this week where we gathered on Zoom as elementary music teachers and just hung out with each other. We have an upcoming classroom management workshop, and we're trying to really connect the elementary music teachers in our state. And then I have some studies that I'm working on. I recently did a content analysis of the elementary music teachers Facebook page. So a group where, they're sharing ideas. And I looked at 1 month and looked at all the kind of categorized all of the posts and what are people talking about and what are their needs. And that was fascinating. So I'm working on that, some manuscript revisions for that right now. So the other area of my research that I'm really passionate about, other than classroom management, is how do pre-service classroom teachers feel about integrating music into their classrooms? And also how are in-service elementary classroom teachers and early childhood as well, are they integrating music? So are they using music for maybe transitions? We're singing about we're lining up to go into the hallway or whatever it might be. So I have some of that going. And then lastly, there's something called the Mountain Lake Colloquium. It's out in Virginia where they filmed part of the Dirty Dancing movie, and it's in May, and I'll be going to see a lot of my people in elementary music ed and higher ed out there in May, and I'll also be presenting some of my restorative justice classroom management study that you saw with Melissa Ryan, who's at the University of New Mexico. So
yes, sometime we will have you back with an in-depth discussion on restorative justice as it pertains to the music classroom. But today, we got to leave it there and jump into the lightning round. Are you ready for your 5 most difficult questions you will hear today?
I am ready.
Your favorite restaurant in San Diego?
My husband and I love a place called Island Prime. It's right on the ocean. If you get to sit by the windows, you're looking at the ocean. You're kind of sitting on it. Awesome steaks, really great food. We only go there for special occasions, but it's at the top of my list.
How about a piece of music, a composer or performer you wish more people knew about?
So we recently had our state music education conference. It was called CASMIC. So it's the California All-State Music Education Conference. And I went to several of the concerts and I heard a piece called Dope, D-O-P-E, and it's by Kataj. I think it's Copley or
Yep.
Copley. It was really cool. One of my favorite pieces that I've heard. It was really amazing. Just awesome.
How about a favorite film or TV series you've enjoyed recently?
So my husband and I are really into Severance on Apple
Okay, cool. I'm going to
TV
stop you
right now.
there. I've seen the
Please.
first season. I haven't seen the second season. So whatever you say next, please don't give anything away.
Please,
Okay,
please summarize the latest episode.
I will not say anything about season two, but if you're into like mystery, I know Ben Stiller is involved, but the music is great. The acting is really great. And it's about these people that work for a company called Lumen, and it focuses on the people on the severed floor, right? So they don't remember their outside selves when they go to the floor, and their inside selves don't remember what they do when they leave, and they start to figure out there's something nefarious going on. Anyway, I love a good mystery, and I just can't wait to see where they go with it.
All right, Jenny, how about the most memorable live music performance you've attended?
So I was at the International Society for Music Education World Conference this summer. It was in Helsinki, Finland. Well, one of my colleagues at San Diego State was researching things to do in that part of Finland, and before we went said, Jenny, Coldplay, who are my favorite band out there, Coldplay, Chris Martin. She said, "You're never going to believe this. Coldplay is playing in Helsinki the week that we're there in the Olympic Stadium." And we went, and it was the best concert I have ever been to. I will never forget it. It was just really cool.
And finally, a book recommendation for our listeners, please.
I love nonfiction, so I love learning about different people, different things, and I read Bad Blood. It's by John Carreyrou, and it's about Elizabeth Holmes. She was a founder and CEO of Theranos, so she was trying to create, and she was not successful. It was like a blood testing device, and it was supposed to be, you get one drop of blood, and it can give you test results for anything and everything, and she just couldn't make it work. And so she lied to all these investors and kept saying, oh yeah, we're making progress, and yeah, we're working. And finally they figured out that she had been essentially stealing the investors' money. But the book is very well written, very well researched, talks about her life, kind of how she ended up in that space. But it's a really great read.
Well, Jenny G, your energy, your enthusiasm, and your expertise are infectious and inspiring. It's been great. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you both for having me. I loved it. Enjoyed our conversation.
Thanks for listening to Music Ed Insights.
We're supported by Group Dynamic, a leading provider of youth leadership workshops. Alan works with dozens of schools each year to help develop their leaders. Learn more at groupdynamicyouth.com.
Or you could email me at alan@groupdynamic.net. Also sponsored by the Co-College Music Education Program. They've got a website too.
Just click their link at our website or email me at shanley@coe.edu.
Also, The Normal Design, helping normal companies and people create memorable, meaningful, and professional designs and branding. More at thenormaldesign.com.
And Winterset Websites, website design and maintenance. wintersetwebsites.com.
Our Facebook page is Music Ed Insights.
Our website has program notes, links, and a one-page download of this episode's key takeaways. That's on musicedinsights.com.
You can expect a new episode most Mondays during the school year.
Get current.
Stay relevant.
Music Ed Insights.